Hi, I'm Subtle. This is the first episode of the Anti-Critic. And today, we're going to talk about the Dark Tower movie. Sorry. Here's the thing that I get out of this movie more than anything else. That there's a certain person that everyone connects with the Dark Tower. A certain person who they think originated it. And he even goes out of his way to dissuade you of this. To give you the idea that you're not quite right. I mean, he does everything short of calling Child Roland to the Dark Tower came the first Dark Tower book. And it is. It is. Now, granted, I never read the whole poem. I don't know anybody who has. It's kind of a literature thing, and I was more of a Dadaist artist. Always have been, always will be. We'll eventually get around to that. You'll see my listicles. You'll know. Here's what I'm talking about when I talk about that. Each different iteration of the Dark Tower was a different interpretation. The poem was very pretentious. I mean, I hate to put it that way, but honestly, the guy just... he was a little full of himself. by the words and the expressions. It just, tone it down, dude. The comic books. Very Marvel. Very Marvel. I mean, right down to how you'd have pages of panels that had no words. Just action after action after action. There was, and lots of characters that were very minor in the grand scale of one iteration, very big in another. Finally we get to the books, which, yes, very famous, very well known, very neo-pulp western. Very, very stylized, very book. and I'm not saying anything against the books. I love the books. There's a reason why I came to the movie with expectations. And when they were dashed, I was like, so what am I watching? And I have to tell you, what you're watching is a movie. And that is all it wants to be. Now, as a movie, and especially as a movie of our current era of movies, you'd expect certain things that are very movie, like over-the-top action sequences, veneration and almost worship of guns, and hero and anti-hero elements that are so goddamn overblown that it's suffocating. And what do you see? In this movie, especially, is overblown action sequences. The worship of the fucking gun. Oh my god, the gun-fu in this is ridiculous. And action figure-like heroics. And anti-hero plot lines that are just overblown to the nth degree. Now, I'm not going to make the argument that most people make about Michael Bay, about how he's a genius that we can't understand. No, no. Everything about this movie that I find absolutely beautiful is on accident. And I know it's on accident, and I still love it. So, honestly, basically what this movie is, accidentally, is the same thing that the poem was. Too much of a poem to really be taken fucking seriously. The same thing that the comics were. So fucking out there that you'd have to really be either a fan of Marvel or a fan of the Dark Tower to really enjoy them at all. And the same thing that the Dark Tower books were. Just so deep in the medium that it is in, that it cannot be removed from it. So essentially becomes a meta-commentary of its own industry. It becomes, this is the joke that you can make about this particular concept of the epic poem, or concept of the sweeping comic book series, or the pulp western in general. And yeah, I think that on accident, in such stunning and beautiful clarity, despite the fact that they get almost every detail of what people love of the books wrong, it is still stunningly entertaining. I don't even really want to talk about just the meta commentary or the statement of a genre within the piece. I want to talk about the movie itself, because even without having to justify it with big flowery words that would have been right at home in the epic poem that spawned all of this, it's pretty fucking fun. Really, there's only one scene, and I think we all know which one it is, that is very bad, like glaringly, stupidly bad. And it's the house. The big demon house. And that's really the only one where I look at that and I'm like, you fucked that up. You fucked that up. Other than that, you got Idris Elba just playing a awesome anti-hero. You've got, I can't remember his name. I don't know if I want to remember that particular actor's name, because when I see him again, I want it to be a surprise. But he was awesome as Jake. Matthew McConaughey was not the miniseries Flag that I remember. And that's okay. That's okay, because we're going to get to my theory at the very end of this. But it makes sense that there would be differences. It makes sense. And really it just makes complete sense that the movie would be where it is plotline wise if, as they'd been explaining over and over again, it is not the recreation of the Gunslinger. It is book 8 in movie form. So yeah, you know, everything is in line. It's just the expectations of the audience that get in the way. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair at all. Anyway, review out of the way, because then we start getting into critique, and critique is pointless. Talk about that later. What I want to talk about is what the movie means as far as everything else that has come and gone with the Dark Tower. Because I know there's a lot of people who are like, no, don't include it at all. But it's funny to me, it actually does track. Because you read a plot synopsis of Child Roland and Dark Tower came, you basically get the sense that this is Roland's first time around trying to save the universe via the Dark Tower. You read through the comic books and you feel like it's a prequel to the movie to the books themselves, right? You read the books and if it's evenly in a place of he's been around a while and this is a not this is not something that he's been winning at. And then where does the movie claim to be? Well, at the very end. And, that's where it belongs. It's the cap to a story of cycling and recycling through time. And this, basically, you can look at every different iteration, every different expression of the Dark Tower as a time capsule, a moment in time in which, the events were the most interesting, therefore the most able to be interpreted as a story. So basically, the way that I look at it is that the poem is the beginning of his quest, where everything goes wrong. He sucks at basically any small gesture that he is trying to excel at. The comic books kind of are in a middling point where he's developing as a character, even with his rotations in time. And the books are basically where he is getting on top of things. Finally, after a long time, finally getting a hold of how he can assert himself through all of his circumstances. And what I find amazingly funny is the movie is the one where he is shown winning, just absolutely winning, and we don't like that one. Damn it. Anyway, that's my interpretation, my theory, as far as everything that has come and gone. Everything is repeated. And just the movie in general. It wasn't bad. I'm not going to say it was Oscar worthy. Nobody really should have gotten the accolades for that thing, but it was a movie. And it was the movie interpretation of the Dark Tower, just like the poem was the poem interpretation of the Dark Tower, just like the comics were the comics interpretation of the Dark Tower. Every interpretation was different. Every interpretation had something to say that was its own style. And, yeah. Fits right in there. Fits right in there. So, yeah. That's why I can appreciate it. I don't love it, but I can appreciate it for what it is. And hopefully, I change some hearts and minds. This has been the first episode of the Anti-Critic. And next week, we tackle Masters of the Universe.